Hi, I'm Professor Surbhi Dahiya and I head the journalism department at the Indian Institute of Mass Communication, New Delhi. Today I'm here to discuss with you one of the most demanding and challenging beats, that is called as crime beat. You have to be on your toes and on your job 24/7 if you are a crime reporter. Crime reporting is one of the most sought after beats in any news organization. It is a job that requires a great degree of attention to details, to journalistic ethics, to reporting carefully. And a crime reporter has to fiddle with so many dangers in day-to-day life. I'm here to discuss what makes crime newsworthy. I will be suggesting some basic principles of reporting crime and tell you how to become an effective crime reporter. Often, the crime reporter is among the first to ring the alarm bells on any sort of abnormalities in any developing society. We will also discuss the art of developing sources and how to follow up a story to its conclusion. We'll discuss how to dig for a story, how to follow leads, how to interview different people to extract information, and how to write a very focused and a crisp, clear and interesting story when you are under pressure of a deadline. Sometimes you might have to file 10 stories a day. How to report crime and whom to contact at district, state or national level is also an important discussion point. I will try and give you some tips on gathering and writing the news stories and how to avoid some of the dangers of crime reporting. Why do we report crime? This is the very first question to ponder. Crime reporting has long been a central part of news coverage in the free press societies or democracies like India, because crime stories are usually newsworthy. People want to read it, listen about it, and they may want to know so that they can prevent a similar thing happening to themselves in terms of crime. They may like to know how criminals take risks and face punishment if they are caught. And it sells newspapers, TV advertisements, books. A crime reporter is the one who reports on the crime or incidents taking place in a particular area or a given region. It can be specific area within a city or the city itself or the state or the nation itself. It's about greed, it's about violence, it's about sex, it's about revenge, it's about robbery, it's about theft. All the really powerful human emotions are attached to crime reporting. Sometimes crime reflects important issues in society like corruption or drugs or say homelessness, hunger, lack of education, etc. And sometimes it is just a good story with no other implications. But the work is not limited to the occurrence of a crime only. The crime reporter has to report specifically on the police departments. He is responsible or she is responsible to tell the readers what is happening in the police departments, about the orders or the crime trends as viewed by the police in that area. Or it might be the politics within that department, corruption, inquiries, new schemes, what happened to the old schemes. So first and foremost, my dear students, you have to get the basics right. You are a journalist, and remember, all the basic journalistic skills are essential here. You have to build your own credibility. You have to be honest, you have to be thorough, you have to be trustworthy, you have to be balanced, you have to be objective. And your copy must be very clear, very ambiguous, all the C's of communication that we talk about. It must be very accurate, and everything must be spelled very correctly. So facts should support every sentence that you write. It must capture the interests of your audience or your readers or your listeners. The crime stories should be, new, unusual, interesting, significant, and it's about people. So crime reporting has to be, current and up to date as possible to have news value. Crime stories, they get stale very, very quickly, but you have to make a point that you follow it up very rigorously. The unusual element has to be in the crime story, murders or, armed robberies. They are not everyday events, but in most communities, many events keep happening which are unusual. So they have a greater news value. Many citizens, they are interested in people who break the law in big or an unusual way. So crime, which by themselves are ordinary, can become very significant when they are placed in the right context. For example, if somebody snatches my chain, and it is not a very, very big crime, but it becomes an important story if my chain snatching is the 100th incident in my locality. So it's a trend that's increased. It becomes serious. So the identity of the victim or criminal is also important. So crimes become more newsworthy if they involve people who are themselves newsworthy. And crime reporting is all about incidents happening with the people. So crime involves people as criminals and as victims. So always try to tell a crime story in human terms. Do not just concentrate all the time on the police and on the criminals, because you have to look at what happened to the victims also, because people or the readers or the listeners, they are more likely to be the victims of that same crime. If you talk about the duties of a crime reporter, as a crime reporter, you have to report on every possible mishap. You have to report on every possible mishap that takes place in your region, from attempts to murder, to rape, to accidents, quarrels, brawls, or clashes, or riots, or suicides, or robberies, or dacoity, or snatchings, or even mugging and white-collar crimes, or even if it is a fire or a protest or a strike somewhere, there is a law and order problem. You are the one who will go and cover it on the spot. Remember, you have to report on all the FIRs which are registered in the police stations, or even some complaints received for lodging an FIR. And you also have to see which are the complaints which have not been registered as FIR and why. So the main FIRs have to be reported separately in a complete details, while the remaining are compiled in a crime diary, which is just 1 or 2 paragraphs per FIR. So you need to report on the working of the police departments, the press conferences, the press releases, and the actual crime spots. So you have to keep an eye on everything, even the notice boards of the police stations or any offices which are related to crime scenes. Often photographs of some wanted criminals are pasted there besides big gangsters or some missing persons, and these pictures of the wanted criminals, they can also make a very big story. So you also need to look at the postmortem reports, and you also have to be in touch with hospitals and the medical fraternity for knowing certain things. You have to keep a pulse on the crime trends. Every news organization, the organization that you will work for, I'm sure, will look for some exclusive stories and special investigation stories as well. So you are expected to file follow-up stories of a sensation or important crime incident and keep reporting it. Keep a pulse on the crime trend which is increasing or even which is showing a downward trend. This might include, spotting a common thread in a crime incident. For example, while reporting murders, suppose there is a serial killer who has murdered around 7 out of 10 murders that took place in a month or so. So you will find a common thread which will make another big story. All the crime reporters, they are expected to take note of this trend and report on the incidents of crime. But you should also take an opinion of sociologists, psychologists, criminologists, forensic sciences, apart from the experienced, say, police officers. But you might be asked to cover a story or a full-page story for a magazine section. Then these things will come handy. This report has to be exhaustive and details of every crime incident, the trend of crime, the past cases, the background stories or the backgrounder, the investigations, the implications, the importance. So it can also be an issue-based reporting, like say a drug addiction or on terrorism. Though news reports talk about the key seizures and arrests and damages to the families, to the communities, to the societies, what is the implication of the drug addiction? That can also be a story. Don't forget to apply your mind. You need to have an inquisitive mind and a lively mind so that you can think of ways around any problems you may come across in reporting. People are upset about the crime. Victims are very, very upset about what has happened to them. So you have to be sympathetic to draw answers. Be suspicious of what you are told, because everything might not be correct. It might have one angle to it. And cross-check the facts. So the police and witnesses may, not mislead you, or they may tell a story which is half-baked or half-truth, or they themselves might not know till then because the picture is very unclear. So the police are more interested in catching the criminals than, answering your questions. And, victims are very stressed out, and the criminals may lie, and you might not get a chance to talk to them. So try and find out people and witnesses who are near and dear ones of the victims, who might be ready to talk. And remember, students, you have to keep your hands clean. Do not accept any gifts, any favors. Do not at any time take part in or provoke any sort of criminal activity. Do not describe criminal activity in such a way that it encourages others also to engage in crime. The readers are very sensitive, and we should not do anything that a reader will read your story or he might or she might get a clue of how to do that crime. Do not exaggerate, do not sensationalize crime. Report it rationally, report it factually. Do not glamorize the criminals or turn them into celebrities. Deal sensitively with the victims of crime, and remember, it's not your job to prosecute or defend the suspects. You don't need to deliver verdicts, or you are not the judge. You cannot pass down the sentences. So there can be various types of crimes. Criminals are there, various types of criminals are there, various types of victims are there. There are serious crimes, there are small offenses, there are heinous crimes, there are non-heinous crimes. There are professional criminals, and there are ordinary people who occasionally break the law. There are crimes which have obvious victims, and there are the so-called crimes which are victimless crimes, but there are hardly any victimless crimes. Someone or the else is affected. It's not always the major crimes which will make the most interesting story or the news. Sometimes a smaller story makes a more interesting news. So as a reporter, it's very important to understand the police department structure, because you have to be on toes with them. You have to be in touch with all the police officers. You must know that police officers at all levels, all regions, they are full of news for you. Not only the structure, you should recognize their uniforms, their stars, their insignia, which is worn by them, by the different ranks, to easily identify them. So one must understand the working of a police department, and officers of various ranks do talk to the cops on the crime scene. Ask them the possible time and the cause of death. Follow it up with the post-mortem staff or the forensic staff or the mortuary or the hospitals. Follow it up with the doctors, follow it up with the nurses, follow it up with the ambulance drivers. Cultivating friendly terms with senior officials is equally very, very important. And you will have to quote these officials to authenticate and complete your story. Remember, your story should be correct, it should be complete, it should be consistent, it should be, coherent. So let's see at the national level whom you can cover. So at the national level, a crime reporter can cover various investigating agencies, which include the Intelligence Bureau, the Central Bureau of Investigation (CBI), National Investigation Agency, and at times you can also be a part of coverage of stories for research and analysis wing, that is RAW, but mostly the defense reporters cover that. At the state level, you see the police headquarters is situated at the state capital. The Director General of Police is the highest authority, and he allocates the work to ADG, that's Additional Director General of Police, the IGs, DIGs, and the lower ranks. Remember, the police service is of two kinds. One is the national, which is called as Indian Police Service, and other is the state, like say Rajasthan Police Service. So the IPS officer cadre is superior, and the state home department, which is headed by an IAS officer, Indian Administrative Services, is in the rank of an additional chief secretary, oversees the working of the police department. Usually the chief minister of a state or a senior minister is posted as the home minister, heading the home and thus the police department. Now let us come down to the district level. The rank structure and duties are very well defined and strictly hierarchical. The department is divided into zones or ranges, each having some districts under it. An Inspector General rank officer or Deputy Inspector General rank officer in some states heads a full range. SSP or say Senior Superintendent of Police heads the district. 2 or 3 superintendents of police are under the SSPs. They head different parts of the district. Then there are DSPs of Deputy Commissioners of Police under them. And the next in hierarchy are the station house officers, that are the SHOs who head a police station. So the SHO is usually in the rank of an inspector and sometimes a sub-inspector. So the other ranks are assistant sub-inspectors, head constables, constables. So you have to keep in touch with as many people possible, recognize them by face and make sure that they recognize you by your face, by your name, by your organization, and they have your numbers and you are quite friendly with them. There are other wings of the police department as well at various levels. The crime reporters, they have to cover the railway police, the traffic police, the central investigation department, sometimes the vigilance bureau. So the crimes done in or happen in trains or at a railway station or the reporter must be very knowledgeable about the authorities that are concerned, whom he should approach. The railway station and the trains are the central government property and the department. Hence, the railway police, which reports to the central government, they respond to these crime incidents. However, if a crime occurring on a railway track outside the railway station, the state railway police, which is called as the GRP, that's government railway police, is the right authority that you can come in touch with. Now let us talk about the crime reporting techniques. How do you maintain your contacts? How do you establish your contacts? It is your task to establish good contacts. People who will tell you about the events as soon as they happen. They'll give you a call. Know your local police well. As I just said, that you should know them by their names, by their designations, on-duty police officers, or good confidential sources within the department who can give you, an off-the-record tip of something. Listen to everything that they tell. You have to show your interest. If you're not interested, even then you show your interest, because otherwise, if they feel that you're not interested, they might not call you next time. So be sure what is newsworthy. You can select what you want to publish or what you don't want to publish. You should have formal contacts as well, because they will be inviting you in various press conferences, and they'll be sending you various press releases. So the police usually hold them so that they can deal with the media at one time. They hold a press conference to deal with all of you, but you should have exclusive stories for your organization. So contacts outside the police force can also be valuable, as I just said, sources from the hospital, from the doctors, the nurses, the ambulance drivers, the mortuary guy. You have to cultivate your sources. One of the major problems of reporting crime is that the event itself is usually over before the journalist gets there. In other beats, you are invited to an event, you go to an event, you cover it beautifully. But here, the situation is very different. By the time the reporter learns of a robbery or a murder, or the robbers will probably have fled, the victims will be maybe in the hospital or in the mortuary. Witnesses answering the police questions, So police have also started investigating by then. So try to get information from as many sources as possible. You must have excellent sources from all the relevant agencies, police, government bodies, courts, hospitals, even the press officers. So make sure you have all the contact list and numbers saved in your phone. So you need a very close working relationship with them. So whenever a big story happens, they'll just give you a call, and you don't have to chase them for information sometimes. Try to interview the victims or the first-hand accounts of what happened. Visit the scene, visit the spot of crime, so that you can add important details to your story, and you can sort it carefully later, but you double check it, and in any case of any doubt or any conflicting information, cross-check with other sources. But make sure you protect your sources. Never trust one source. Cross-check, double check from all the sources, but you have to protect your sources. One must be known to all his sources and be recognized by them easily, but at the same time he is the one who will take care of his sources. They might provide you on the record information. They might explain their own credentials, and explaining their credentials might add weight to your story. But sometimes they give you off the record information and they wish to remain anonymous. So protect their anonymity. Decide how to use that information carefully. Right? Next, when you go and observe very closely, you have to monitor them very regularly. Observation is a very, very essential tool. One should always be a very good observer of the crime spot, which could be full of information. And on the crime round, you must always be aware of what is happening and what is not. Keep your eyes and ears open and listen carefully what is said and what is not said. For example, if all your contacts in the police station are suddenly unavailable and not taking your call, so you should be suspicious that something big is happening. they might be at the crime scene, or they have left to be there. So get down to the police station straight away to find your big story. Details, details, details is the key. You have to gather all the facts very, very carefully. You might have heard about Joseph Pulitzer, the American newsman. We have the Pulitzer Award also. He was also a very keen crime reporter, and he always wanted his reporters to provide more details. So work hard, keep digging, keep adding the facts. More facts means better story. Visualize what happened, when it is being described to you. Build up a mental picture of the crime, asking for missing details when you see the gap in your imaginary picture. Just check what is the important information. You should know what is the exact nature of crime, whether it's a murder or it's a suicide or it's an assault or it's an accident. Sometimes the picture is very unclear. So know exactly where and when the crime was committed, what time of the day it was, what time of the night it was. Try and find out how it was committed. Always ask whether a weapon was used or not, and what weapon was used, particularly in violent crimes. What kind of a weapon, how it was used, and decide carefully what you wish to say in the story. So sometimes, method of criminal use is often the most newsworthy aspect of the crime. Ask the value of, anything which is stolen. If the thieves have used a new and a clever way of breaking, say, into a building or a murder, you may give other criminals an idea by describing it exactly. On the other hand, if you do not tell your readers or listeners how crime took place, they may be, not aware of anything. So if you tell them, they may be better prepared to protect themselves. So you have to decide how much you have to tell. Try to get as many details as possible about the victims, about the suspects, about the witnesses. Ask their names, age, address. Even you don't have to publish the address, but you should know it. What is their occupation? What's the injury that they suffered? So get details of any witnesses so that you can talk to them. Everything might not be used for publication, but it is for your benefit, for a better story, for a better follow-up. So the police may have suspect or a list of suspects, although you may not be able to use the actual names. You might be able to describe them well, a short man or a long man. So you can be describing, in Delhi, we had the Thak Thak gang. You have to quote very carefully. Try to get the lively quotes for balancing your story. Get quotes from all the parties, from the police officials, from the victims, from the witnesses, maybe from the criminal also. But understand the stress that the victim is in. All the information that you gather must always aim for accuracy. You have to try and avoid the legal risks. Develop your own credibility. Maintain your reputation. Double check the facts. Cross-check with another source if you have any doubt about the information that you've been given. You have to sometimes handle appeals for help. Police may ask you that, he is a lost man and, we appeal that in your story, you please write about it and appeal help from the public. So it could be particularly for finding a wanted man or a stolen thing. But you might receive a request from police to keep a story out of news also. So that means they want a news blackout. So how to handle that blackout? Do not take your own decision for a news blackout. There could be many reasons: a continuing surveillance, or maybe somebody's life is in danger, they will tell you. So do not decide such matters individually, but don't agree to a blackout without consulting your editor and your organization. Ask them if they want to go for this story or they don't. But you might spoil your relation if they are asking for a blackout. But you have to decide how important that story is, or you can embargo it. You should also have a filing system, a diary, or something which you can save for a later date and track all your upcoming dates on which a follow-up can be done. It's very easy to lose track because the crime reporters are very busy and they deal with a large number of different stories. So follow-up of a story is very, very essential. And there can be a long running major criminal investigation or a court case, or crime reporters, they need a good system of filing information for the future use. So you have to monitor the developments in the case and make diary notes of when further developments are likely to happen. Your checks may unearth information with the police at any point of time. So you have to coordinate with the court reporters also in your bureau for maybe the follow-up stories. And sometimes while the incidents that find prominent space in the newspaper, a reporter has to be very, very creative in spotting as well as writing an offbeat story also. There are various heinous crimes in our country that have happened. So as a crime reporter, you must know all those important cases. Suppose you are given crime beat today and there's a follow-up of a previous case. So you must have read about many important cases. The Telangana wet rape and murder case, the Unnao rape case, the Divya Bharti case, Sunanda Pushkar case, Arushi Talwar case, Jessica Lal case, Sheena Bora case, Nithari Kand, Darbara Singh, the baby killer, the Priyadarshini Mattu case, Hathras rape case, Nirbhaya gang rape case, Kathua rape case, Geeta Chopra case, Devendra Sharma, the doctor turned killer case, the Tandoor murder case. There are so many cases, important ones, which you should know. But while filing your data, do remember that all electronically held data is insecure. So if you keep confidential information in an electronic form, make sure it's encrypted. And information you keep on your computer, on your personal organizer, on your mobile or any other electronic device is discoverable by, say, the authorities or the thieves or the hackers. So decide where you want to keep and preserve your data. Documents are very important. Websites are very important. Reports are very important. The National Crime Bureau report, NCRB data. So the annual crime statistics, they always make news, and you must visit the websites of all these crime bureaus or police stations. And they try to get a quote of some, you should try to get a quote of some senior official while you are studying, these websites or these documents for some trends of crime increasing or, decreasing. NCRB is a very, very important database, and it's one of the single largest source. It's a gold mine of data and information. So it releases online annual crime report every year in April or November, and the reports are catalogued in different categories and are analyzed and compared with data across the country. So journalists, they often have to file dozens of stories over several days once the reports they are released. So you be ready to read it thoroughly and look behind the facts and the figures and study the important and the increasing crimes. As I said, analyze those trends, both heinous and non-heinous trends. Always try to put a human face on the figure. You can also speak to a psychologist or a sociologist or forensic sciences, as I already told you. So what advice do the police have for preventing such crimes? Find out whether their lives have changed because of a crime trend. Do not be frightened to know the jargons and tell those jargons, but it should not be so technical that people do not understand. If it is not clear to you, you may ask and explain simply to your readers. The next point is that how should we write important crime stories? You have to follow the inverted pyramid structure of news writing, the basics. After the lead, you can tell the details in a chronological order. You should know your limit as a reporter, and you should not be prejudiced to the chance of a fair trial. So you may, you can make your story interesting with background reports and features and pictures. So accuracy is the very crux of the report. Remember attribution, which is very, very important. You have to attribute to your sources if it's on the record. Language is very, very important. Select each word in your story very, very carefully. For example, we usually use the word allegedly. So we don't say that so-and-so has murdered, but if somebody is saying, you say allegedly. Jargons and legal language is important to understand. There's a difference between words. Try and understand that. Like theft. It's simply, stealing. It is distinct from robbery, which is a theft maybe with violence or a threat of violence. So write very simply, but use adjectives and adverbs only when it is necessary. For example, I have read many reports where it's said a brutal slaying, as if slaying can be gentle. So you have to report very, very carefully. Media might not encourage people to commit crimes, but they often show how it can be done. So there are some crimes which are modeled on what the crime scene has indicated, or what the readers have read or heard. So we can call these as copycat crimes. So do not show the way to the criminals. Being a crime reporter, you have to be very, very careful in making a difficult decision about how much you have to tell the readers and listeners. You should always check with the police before releasing the names of the victims of crime, because you cannot release the name of the rape victim, or sometimes the murder has taken place. You cannot just release the name that so and so has been murdered, because police want to sometimes inform the family persons first. So there are so many things to remember. You cannot just no photos of minors or rape or molestation or sexual abuse victims should be published. And you also should take care that on the front page, on the first the photo, the lead story carries a bloodshed photo, so that readers, they don't feel bad when they open the newspaper the first thing in the morning. So you have to take care and decide very meticulously what has to go in the publication or in the TV clip. You have to refrain from asking hurting questions or making accusations or insinuations while collecting the information. I would suggest that you should read some detective novels also. They help the reporters in learning description of a crime spot and terminology. When I was a budding reporter, I used to read Agatha Christie and Sidney Sheldon and Sherlock Holmes. So I'm sure that these tips would come handy, and you can become a better crime reporter. See you soon with more educational videos about reporting, journalism, communication and mass communication. Do like and subscribe if you like my video. All the best. Bye.